So we must do two things, two great things together, to encompass that enormous new view that lies before us, but to encompass it within the framework of science, to see it within the whole categorical framework of science, and to see that these two are not separate, but that they are wedded. The bigness of the idea, the newness of the idea, the greatness of it is one with the structure of science, the structure of being itself. So we have come to divine science and have seen what soul is on the level of divine science. And let's just remind ourselves of the fact that all of these levels have really already been symbolized in the Bible, and that St. John's great revelation was the revelation of the consciousness of these levels, especially the level of divine science, as divine science embraces and includes within itself the levels of absolute Christian Science and Christian Science. And the symbol behind divine science, as we know it from St. John's vision in the Bible, is what? It is the city four square. Do you remember that? It's that city that has four equal sides. And those four equal sides are indicating really the calculus 4 of Word, Christ, Christianity, and science, and indicating that realm of divine science as an infinite closed system. We see it is a 4 square, you see, 4 square with each side being equal. And therefore it is closed, because those 4 sides are knitted together, held together, are one great structure, really. It's a closed system, giving us a touch of that tonality of divine science as an infinite closed system that is all-embracing, all-encompassing, an infinite self-containment of being. This is typical of the tonality of divine science. So divine science is the infinite. It is that infinite one shown to be a closed system, infinite in its closedness, which means that it is including all within itself, including all that being is, the all in all. In other words, there is nothing more, nothing else, you see, nothing outside of that infinite closed one, which is the oneness of being. Everything is within that oneness. All the open systems are held and nested or implied within the one closed system. You know, in nature it's interesting to see that you have no truly closed system. Scientists will speak about approximations of closedness. They look at certain systems and they say that's a closed system and so forth, but closer and closer analysis they find that actually there are no closed systems as such, because really living systems must be dynamically open. Especially, you see, a living system has to be dynamically open in order to be truly alive. And so open systems will interact with their environment. They move within their environment. And if you have a closed system in an open environment, it's really a dead system. It would be something that is dead. But actually, in nature itself, there is no closed system. Even when they look out to the universe and they say, well, perhaps the universe itself is a closed system, and that within that universe is all of the openness. But you know that as they go more deeply into the questions of what constitutes a universe, and they begin to make further discoveries, and they begin to see that there are other universes, that what we thought was a universe that included everything really doesn't include everything, that there are other universes, that there are wormholes in and out of time and space that connect various universes together, and black holes are often considered to be, I guess, like a wormhole or some sort of a means for moving between various universes in the physical cosmos. This is all very much just off the top of my head, but just to show you that in nature itself there are no closed systems. Going back to that system of divine science, which we said is a divinely closed system, an infinite closed system, you can see that all the quality of openness is nested within the closedness. And that this quality of openness then will correspond with the level of absolute Christian Science. The openness is all to do with the nature of ideas. Ideas are open systems. Ideas are open. They are occasions of, they are examples of, they are innately open systems that move dynamically within the infinite field of the one closed system of divine science. And thus it will be absolute Christian Science that shows us through its calculus the operation of the openness. And once again you have an infinite openness. There's no limit to that openness, no limit to those open systems. What did the Bible call that? Because St. John, in his vision of the city foursquare, had a further vision, and that was the vision of the city of our God. That's what he called that open system. It's a funny terminology, funny to the human mind, and it really took Mrs. Eddy's great work in the 16th chapter of the textbook to explain these levels and to interpret them in their scientific language, which is the language of the textbook, to explain really divine science and absolute Christian Science and Christian Science. Because she explained how that city foursquare, which is closed because of its four sides, how it then can be seen from this further plane of consciousness, the consciousness of absolute Christian Science. And this is what we find when we are given the interpretation of that city as having 12 gates. Do you remember that the city had 12 gates, that each side had 3 gates within it? And she and St. John both speak about the gates opening within and without. You remember that? Those gates really are fuzzy. They're fuzzy gates. What do we mean? Let's remind ourselves again of that fuzziness, because we see that first side, that first wall, so to say, or side of the city, is the side of the Word. And it has 3 gates. So it has a gate opening toward the Christ, a gate opening toward Christianity, and a gate opening toward science. So you have Word is Word, Word is Christ, Word is Christianity, Word is science. You hear the fuzziness in it. That in order for that side to be what it is, that side of the Word, it must have those gates that reflect the other sides. And so the side of the Christ has a gate that reflects the Word, a gate that reflects Christianity, and a gate that reflects science, and so on. So that all in all, you see that there are 12 gates in the 4 sides, and that gives you the fully reflected sense of that city. And so within the holy city is the city of our God. which has this complete sense of openness, or of infinite self-reflection, I guess we could say, is another way of looking at that openness. So that city of our God is really telling us about the further levels of absolute Christian Science, and then the implications of absolute Christian Science for the level of Christian Science. Now, John Dorley took what St. John had given, and he took what Mrs. Eddy had given, and he further explained it, and could explain everything as what we know today as those levels of divine science, absolute Christian Science and Christian Science. Mrs. Eddy presents the constituency of it all in the 16th chapter. So it's not just something that we've trumped up or made up. It's from the Bible and from the Christian Science textbook, and these are the two texts upon which we base ourselves. So John Dorley saw the whole thing as a whole, and was the first really to crystallize that presentation of the levels of being, and to present it in an absolutely clear and unmistakable way. He gathered it all up, and in his chart he presented it. You remember that we've spoken about that evolution of the chart to the model of being, to the design of being, and at the root of it all was Mr. Dorley's presentation of what he called his chart, and that chart was setting forth really what he called these levels, and he referred to these levels as the three great metaphysical levels of divine science, absolute Christian Science, and Christian Science. And then maybe you remember or not that he added a footnote. Right on that chart was a footnote, and he said that all of these levels are embedded in the one principle of science itself. Perhaps that isn't the exact wording, but he indicated that those three levels were the three great metaphysical levels of the one all-inclusive science itself. So you see how he gathered those three levels up. It reminds you of what we keep seeing over and over again with the word Christ, Christianity, and science, that science gathers up the word Christ and Christianity into one, into science, the science standpoint. So you feel that now is also the case with the levels, that science itself will gather up those three great metaphysical levels of divine science, absolute Christian Science, and Christian Science into the one standpoint of the all-inclusive science itself. So this is just so that we know the background of where we are now, and that all of these things that we seem to assume, as newer students come in and they begin to take up the study and to listen to classes on any given subject, it seems that we assume, we make assumptions, but it is good to stop and to look and to recall that where we have our foundation and where these things come from, and to remind ourselves as well as anyone who is newly on the scene and wondering. So we take these things all so naturally today, but they have their deep, deep roots in the Bible and in the Christian Science textbook by Mary Baker Eddy. So now we have a feel, and we're gaining a feel for that closed system, aren't we, of divine science? That city four square is where the divine nature now is expressing itself in its calculus as a creation, and that creation is a whole, is as a whole. It's the creation of the divine principle as a whole. And now when we want to look at the specifics of that creation, it is because we want to see an individual aspect of that creation, an individual creation within the whole of that one all-inclusive creation or idea of divine science. And we really want this all the time. Really, it's the most natural thing to us to want to know about the specific, about a specific or the specifics. This is going on all the time, all through the day, from the moment we awaken in the morning until the last, moment that our eyes are open, and even in our dreams. This is such a natural thing that we are always looking for the next specific. You see that even as I'm speaking with you, this is going on. You don't know what I'm going to say next. I don't know what I'm going to say next. Truly, I don't know what the next word, the next statement will be. Because it will be something specific, and every new word I say is something specific, and we need that, don't we? We need the specifics in order to be able to understand the higher, the whole, you see. And so it's absolute Christian Science and its laws that make that possible. And this level of absolute Christian Science, which the Bible calls the city of our God, is an open system. And it's all concerned with openness and the unlimited variety of open systems that we call ideas. Those ideas which then further translate themselves and come to us, as we will see, really, they come to us as inspired thought, as knowing what to say, what to do, how to act, really acting and moving and living and being constantly in a new and a specific and a new way at every moment. So, absolute Christian Science, what is it? It's the open system within the one infinite closed system of divine science. That's that nestedness. Let's never forget that we're not talking about watertight compartments or levels, physical levels, somehow that we move out from one level and down to another level. It's a great nestedness of everything being nested now within that infinite one, within divine science, that divine science nests and holds within itself the further and further levels. And what does that openness now of absolute Christian Science indicate? Within, really, the city four square with the four equal sides that are closed, within that is the city of our God, open. And I'd like to always show you the science hula. Remember? So it's first science itself, that being is just itself. It is its own infinite self. And then as it begins to consider itself within itself, considering really its idea of itself, you see that you become conscious that science is conscious of itself, knows itself, its idea being the calculus, and that calculus being the infinite closed system which contains and holds. You see my arms are reached out now, and it's like a great holding of everything, containing of everything within itself, in one infinite whole, in one great oneness and allness of being. And then you see that we come to the level of absolute Christian Science, and there we would see that within that infinite self-containment of being and the all-inclusiveness of being is this infinite spontaneity and expression and reflection of the continual newness of ideas, the continual specifying and individualizing of all that being is within itself, and that every individualization of being is is consciously known to its divine principle. And so in the science hula, if you recall, we have no one is going to know this on the tape. You'll just have to ferret it out. So that within that infinite self-containment is this continual projection and expression of newness and individuality, the infinite individualities of that one great infinite individuality of the one being. And then further on the level of Christian Science, you get a feeling that has a descent, that's coming to everything, that those individual ideas, those specific ideas, are the solution to each and every specific counterfeit, each and every specific claim, or a claim that a truth is not a truth, that each specific truth deals with its specific error. So that's the descent, and you know that in the 4 levels, just going now back up and to make this comparison between divine science and absolute Christian Science even clearer. I hope it has some clarity to it now, but we need to just see so much more about it. And it's so helpful to, of course, to refer back to the 4 Levels book by Max Kappeler, where you see that absolute Christian Science is symbolized by, do you recall that when Max is talking about divine science, he gives us that symbol of a square, really. It's just a square that he shows on the page, and because we're dealing with a flat surface and ink and paper and so forth, it's only an indication of what we have been talking about in terms of those 4 equal sides on the level of divine science. But when he comes to absolute Christian Science, he gives quite a different symbol. And that's the symbol, really, of, it's like a coordinate system. You remember? It's like a grid, like we're given a grid, or what you would find in geometry as those coordinate lines, which, when applied, you see, when those coordinates now, the coordinates that are given to us in absolute Christian Science, when they are applied within the infinite field of divine science, they will yield the specific truth about any situation, any specific question. And so those coordinates are really the coordinates of a compass. They are the compass. It's a compass with not 4 equal sides, but with 4 cardinal points. So a compass with 4 great coordinates, we could say. And what are those 4? You see, you know from a compass that you have north, east, south, and west. And for us now in the science of being, our coordinates are again the calculus. So we get the coordinate of the Word, the coordinate of the Christ, of Christianity, and of science. It's very, very beautiful how that translation takes place, and we see that in divine science we have the closed system, and then we are given the compass for moving within that closed system. This is really just another way of expressing what is being expressed in this design of being, namely that great nestedness. In other words, that nested within the closed system, implied within the closed system, held within the closed system of divine science, is every further level. And those further levels are all to do with the open systems. Absolute Christian Science shows us what? It's like a model for the perfect open system, symbolized in the Bible as the city of our God. And the laws of absolute Christian Science show us what that openness must be comprised of. They show us really the laws that govern that openness, so that that openness is never random, it's never wild, it's never untethered, it's perfectly governed by the calculus. And we see what it is constituted of, what that government is constituted of through those laws of absolute Christian science, and what it means to have that openness as a scientific system, the dynamic system, really, of the science of being.